Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Gen V Season 1 Episode 3. It's called #ThinkBrink. So, spoilers for the episode. So this rounds out the trio that came out on day 1 and they leave it off in a pretty strong cliffhanger. I think a lot like some of those seasons of The Boys. Season 2 especially in my mind. Things really got rolling with episode 3, and I kind of feel the same way with Gen V here. I think we spent 3 episodes developing the characters to varying degrees between each episode, and then by the end of this episode, they're starting to intermingle a bit more. The bit of, there's a bit of bonding between Marie and the others. They kind of open up a little bit, and Emma gets involved in things, and it feels like the plot's moving. It feels all these things, and I like this episode quite a bit. And one of the big reasons why I like this episode is something as simple as the motivation of characters to do what they end up choosing to do by the end, particularly Emma, is really strong. So towards the end of the episode, well, maybe about a third before the end, something like that. It's actually a bit earlier because there's a good bit that happens after this decision, but Emma chooses to help Andre, who she's never spoken to before. This is the first time they've ever really interacted. And Andre intentionally goes and talks to her and effectively asks for her help to use her powers to go and find Sam and talk to Sam in the woods, right? To sneak into the cell, all tiny like, and, progress their plan to try and save him that way. And I think what's so strong about this is that yes, he is asking her to use her power. He is asking her to go small. But the difference is between this and the guy who was just sort of sexually into it and really wanted to do that for him is that he gives her a reason. He gives her context, right? He isn't like sort of try and lie about what's going on. He just straight up shows her the evidence. Here's Sam, he's in a cell, it's underneath the campus. They're locking people up, and she reacts to that and says that's awful, could they do that to us? But the big thing for me is that not only is the context of how he asked this different, it's very upfront and he gives her all the context so she can make an informed decision, and it is her choice. In fact, even once he makes the request, in fact, he barely even makes the request. He kind of just backs out of it because he realizes what he's asking is maybe too much, because it is potentially life-threatening. These people might kill her if she gets caught, and she jumps in with both feet. And what's so good about this decision is that the entire subplot she has this episode up until this point motivates that decision. Motivations for characters to do anything at any particular time are so important to making you feel like the writing is earning what it's doing. Her entire subplot this episode is she's still being cold with Marie. Although, by this point, I think they've made up a little bit in the bathroom. The fact it's a really odd scene where Emma's helping Marie pee in her big dress, and she ends up hugging her while she's on the toilet seat. And the scene is capped off with the sound of the pee finally coming out, which I thought was particularly sweet and funny in every way. But the subplot for her is her mother, right? Her mother shows up to campus because they're doing this fundraiser. This is the Brink fundraiser. And the mother's there for it, and she shows up, and you get the sense that she is this mother who's pushing her in a certain direction. She, it's just a little bit like Starlight's mom to an extent. It's not the exact same, but it's very along the same lines. This idea of the pressure from the parents. We see it with Andre's dad as well, in other ways. But very quickly, she seems to be helping her daughter feel better, right? She sort of like gets a little catty about Justine, calls her a bitch, who does try to film her apology sneakily, and Emma, quite rightly, just walks away. That was amusing. But this all builds up to her mother just being someone else who wants to exploit her, right? Obviously not for sex, like the guy, or some perverted reason, but her mother tries to set her up on a reality TV show. The idea that this can be this, like, insight into this girl with an eating disorder, and she doesn't like that, right? Emma makes it very clear this episode she doesn't like it being called an eating disorder. She doesn't see it that way, and maybe that's something that she'll sort of explore as a character over the course of the season. But we have this really kind of heartbreaking scene where her mother is trying to goad her into this with this producer, who, by the way, I finally realized where I know this actress from. The producer lady is from Glow. I recognize you there. And it's really sad because, like, her mother's just exploiting the same things, right? It's all about just making money, and it's exploitative, and she doesn't want this. She doesn't want this show to be about her problem. She doesn't want a show that just exploits the same thing that everyone on campus has been making fun of her for the past couple of days. Whatever she ends up doing, she doesn't want it to be that. The mom even says in the scene that she's not Maeve. Because Emma brings up Maeve. She wants to, that's the thing, yeah, because the start of this is before the scene in the bathroom with Marie. So the first half of this scene is where she gets really upset and she goes to the bathroom and cries and runs into Marie and they have their heart-to-heart. And she comes back with a renewed attitude. And she tries to change the course of it. She tries to make some suggestions where she might be comfortable with this if instead of it being this just sappy, exploitative piece of reality TV trash, what if it's more of an inspirational thing because she's able to live with it and get through it, and it can be about the strengths she has. They kind of poo-poo that effectively quite quickly, and her mum flat out says, "You're not Maeve, you have to work with what you have." Or I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that was the gist of the conversation, and it's kind of heartbreaking. And that makes her storm off, and then Andre goes out and sees her. And I think her decision, without even hearing like much of a she gets the context, but without hearing much of an argument, she says she's in. She says she's in even when he's trying to take back that he was even going to make a request. And I think it's quite clear that she makes that choice because this feels important. She's been given someone who's in trouble, and she can do something to help them. She can actually do something that matters, at least to her, or if not in a general sense, but certainly she sees someone who is being a victim, and that maybe she can have some small part, no pun intended, of saving that person, of being a hero. Then she's proving to herself that she can be Maeve, that she can be like that. And we know Maeve's got a trickier story than that, but at least to her and to like all these young people, Maeve is this role model who's just this hero. She wants to live up to that, and she's given this opportunity, and that's why she does it. And it's so good because you don't question it. When she makes this choice, you understand, whether you think logically, you're not in the show, you're analyzing this from a distance, you can sit and say it's the wrong choice, it's a dangerous choice, you shouldn't be making that choice. It doesn't matter, even if you feel that way. You understand why she is motivated to make that choice in the moment, why she feels like the temptation of it as soon as it's presented with her, and the idea that she feels this sense of like being needed and the respect of actually being given the information and the choice to be a part of it. All these things all just are the complete opposite to what she's been forced into seemingly by her mother and the other people around her, that she's just always going to be this victim, which, by the way, we find out her mother is the one who taught her to throw up. I wonder, did that come before she naturally threw up and shrank? But they also actually set up another interesting thing here, which we didn't know until this episode, is that she gets big again by eating. Maybe they've implied that before, but I don't think they outright say it until this episode. And it kind of seemed like there was a danger when Marie comes back to the dorm room at the start of the episode. It did seem like there was a danger that she could potentially get too small and effectively go into the quantum verse or something, because she's so tiny, because she's thrown up too much, to the point where maybe there's at a certain point she can't get to food because she's too small and people are having a trouble finding her. I did have some questions later on about what she's wearing when she's tiny, because her clothes don't shrink with her. We've seen her take her clothes off to shrink. So I was paying attention when she had clothes on towards the end, and I couldn't really tell what they came from, but they did have a very kind of specific look. Like, I'm wondering if it's like a toys dress or something that she's wearing. Certainly, she's wearing like a GPS tracker chip, right? So that Andre will know where she is. And the rope or the strap that was being used for that was literally just, I think, string that was just sort of wrapped around her a few times. So it is interesting seeing how they play with that without explicitly stating it too much. It'll probably become more overt as time goes on. But at least right now, it's a fun little thing to pay attention to those details and see how they're playing with the idea that she, is having to make do with items that aren't really for humans, but because she's so small, she has to make do, or even make her own little tiny clothes potentially. All very interesting. And then of course she actually sneaks into the woods and gets to Sam. I appreciated, this is just a small detail, and maybe this will come up later, but there's the woman who's delivering the food to all the inmates. She has a bandage on her arm, and then she gets to a door where flames come out the little hatch, and then she puts in the tray and she kicks the slot shut with her foot, and she's been very careful because she's clearly been hurt before. She's got a big bandage and a burn mark on her arm. I really appreciated that they didn't have to do the bandage and the burn mark. They could have just had her open the thing carefully, some flames come out, the scene plays exactly like it did before, and it wouldn't matter that the burn mark and the bandage wasn't there. But it's such a small thing, but because you see her going down the hall with this bandage and some burns kind of like poking out from underneath it, it immediately makes you go, wait, why is she injured? Why does she have burns? And you start to think, is there a flame-related person down here? And then when you get to the door, it feels like you're getting a little payoff to the little tease you got in the moment. It's not a big thing. It's not exactly advancing the plot. I'm sure the flame dude will come into play in some small way later because they've set him up. He's Chekhov's, I was going to say Human Torch, but Golden Boy was the Human Torch. I guess he's the second Human Torch. There has been more than one Human Torch. So, not the silliest thing I've ever said. But yeah, Sam and Emma kind of hit it off in a weird way. He thinks she's not real at first, and they do this test with just various facts about himself, which she doesn't know any of because she isn't him, and she is real. And he eventually admits that his favorite movie is Waterworld, which, honestly, the only thing that's made me think he should be locked up in a mental asylum is the statement that Waterworld is his favorite movie. But him and Emma kind of hit it off. He kind of flirts a little bit in his own goofy way. They've got some chemistry, so that was kind of neat. And it was like, okay, what's so good about this is that this is the first time we've really gotten Sam as a character. We saw him running around in the first episode. We didn't really get to know him. He was just yelling and being dragged, kicking and screaming into a cell. Here, we actually get to see him play off someone else. And what's good about this is that Andre's motivation and Kate's motivation, who's also obviously kind of in on it as well, is that they obviously both cared about Golden Boy, and this is his brother, and he deserves to be saved. But what's nice about this is that it forms this new connection to Emma, where Emma is a new person in Sam's life who now cares about him, at least in some small way. And that's just deepening all the connections of the characters. Because it's notable that Emma hasn't interacted with any of the rest of the characters other than Marie and obviously Justine, but I'm thinking like the main group. Because when Andre mentions Emma, like the other girls are like, wait, who? So I think all of this was a slam dunk. I think Emma's plot here was the important plot for the ongoing story because it was the one that ties into Sam, and it gives us the cliffhanger, and it gives us the crazy thing. Like, I enjoyed seeing her tiny on the train, looking over the edge and all that stuff. But obviously the ending, when obviously, and I've said obviously too many times, but when they realize that someone else is in there, they've got scanners or something that are picking up another life form in the room, and they electrocute the floor. Sam gets like taken down. The SWAT guy comes in and he's looking for whoever it is. And because he starts electrocuting Sam again, Emma decides to take a literal leap and jumps onto the back of this guy and kills him by climbing into his ear and basically just swimming through to the other ear. Effectively, it's kind of like getting shot in the ear, I guess, just really slowly, where she swims through his brain, I guess, and comes out the other side. And the final shot of this episode is her in this guy's ear, who's now obviously on the floor dead, but she's in this pool of blood in his earlobe and just sort of been like, oh, this is so gross, this is disgusting. So wonderful ending, but it also is a good cliffhanger because it puts her in danger, and now she's in the woods. They know she's there. It's going to be hard to convince them that she isn't there given what she just did to this guy. So now it's like, okay, now not only do we have to save Sam, now we have to maybe save Emma, and potentially this will bring Marie, Andre, Kate, and Justin all together. And so as far as the main plot goes in the overall story, this was a great, riveting kind of like build up to this. This meeting with Sam felt really nice. There was always a worry that we were going to get to Sam and maybe he wouldn't be as good a character as the rest of them, or he wouldn't be as likable. And he actually seems to be quite likable, and he has good chemistry with Emma. So immediately it was like, okay, this is working. Now we've got this goal. The only critique I could really have of the first 3 episodes of this show is that it would have been nice to get that feeling maybe a little earlier. But I think they knew these 3 were going to, as a trio, because they've done that with multiple seasons of The Boys. Amazon let a lot of shows do this. I think they knew that these were going to be together, and that a lot of people were probably going to watch them as a 3. I can understand and respect that. You know, a lot of pilots get double episodes and things like that. It's not that weird. I like doing episode by episode. I think it's good to judge it on that merit, especially in this streaming world where a lot of shows like Netflix, you know, they'll put out the entire seasons, and I think it is worth judging how good the episodes are individually, because like fundamentally one of the problems with a lot of streaming shows, especially the ones from Netflix, is that they don't work as individual episodes, and you don't get a satisfying chapter of a story that has its own beginning, middle, and end. And I think The Boys was exceptional, and has been exceptional, of giving me full satisfying episodes and chapters with every single entry every week, making it feel like I got a satisfying week of TV. It leaves me excited for the next one, and this episode, as the ending of the opening trio of episodes, feels like this show's going to do the same thing. And that was something that Eric Kripke and co fought for with The Boys. They wanted it to be weekly. They think that format's superior. And when I heard them talk about that, I'm like, yeah, I agree. This is exactly why I agree with everything you're saying. Like, you're speaking to me. So, anywho, that is the main thing with Emma. I thought all that stuff was handled really well. Likewise, I thought Jordan's subplot. Did I say Justin earlier? I mean, I said Justin once by accident. Maybe I didn't. I'm questioning myself now. But Jordan's plot in this episode, which also brings in some parents, is really interesting, and kind of in the same way that last episode, and this episode actually, because they actually fly out, say, eating disorder, and I don't think they say self-harm, but Emma says you cut yourself to Marie. Likewise with Jordan, the parallels and discussion of queer children and trans children becomes a lot more like at the forefront. It's a lot less under analogy and more just blatant, but not in a bad way. I actually really appreciated this, especially since there's a unique twist to this where, yes, it is this character who can shift backwards and forwards and can be either at any time. The way it handled it this episode reminded me, actually, of all things, of Mystique from the X-Men movies, because there's a line in the second X-Men movie, and I'm not that fond of those movies. I you know, people like X-Men 2 a lot. I think it's just okay. But there's a line in that movie from Mystique when Nightcrawler says something to the effect of, you can look normal all the time, so why don't you? Notably, he's blue and sort of demon looking, and so is she. And she says, because I shouldn't have to. And I was sort of thinking of that a little bit with something that Jordan's dad says to them later in this episode, because he says, you could be a boy all the time if you wanted to. You know, he doesn't understand why they don't feel that way. It's interesting because we learn that Jordan was born male, right? Clearly that's the implication here from him, the dad saying you were my firstborn son and all that stuff. And I was actually curious early on, because obviously we open with Jordan in this episode where Jordan in female form is having sex with a guy, which honestly is kind of a weird scene. It does that. This is a very movie thing where there's a couple having sex and one of them is just distracted and thinking and talking about something else, right? I see that a lot in movies and shows. What I think makes this a bit unique is that Jordan is the one who's distracted, but then immediately after talking about whatever they're talking about, I think it was the rankings and being mad about that again, they immediately say, I'm about to come, which I thought was kind of weird. Like, how are you climaxing when you're not even focusing on the sex. I thought that was a little bit odd to me, but whatever. Like quirky. It was a little quirky, I guess, is what I'm saying. But the parents show up, and the guy can walk through walls, so he just leaves, and Jordan gets ready and opens the door. But notably, and I saw this coming, this is actually a good direction, is it kind of telegraphs that they're about to change into male form. It seems like that's what the parents want and expect. And it made me wonder for a second, like, did they not know? Did they not know that the abilities that their kid have is by gender and switching between? Maybe with some extra superpowered stuff, like, on top of that. Someone made a comment about how it might not be that there's a powers at the moment of transition, but more that either form has a slightly different power set. So one's invulnerable and the other one's like super strong or something like that. Again, something I'm looking forward to paying attention to see how they do that. Which reminds me of Crazy Jane from Doom Patrol a little bit. She has a lot more powers and a lot more personalities. That's like a multiple personality thing where each personality has its own power. But it kind of makes me think of that, where male form has one set of powers, female form has another set of powers. But I thought that stuff was good, because once it actually gets into things later on, and the parents are talking Jordan up, and they have this moment with them, Jordan makes this choice after, I can't even remember, what did the dad say? The dad said something when they were trying to smooze with this bigwig who's important at the college. And something the dad said, I wish I remember what it was, because it was another good moment of the motivation, right? The motivation, and again, you could kind of see it coming just right before Jordan does it, where they choose to switch into female form just to effectively make a statement, because the dad said something about Jordan being like a great boy or something like that. There was like a specific motivation in the scene, and Jordan switches, and the dad and the mom get kind of uncomfortable. The guy that they were trying to smooth, obviously everyone at the college knows that Jordan switches between genders. That's like their thing. Like, they've been doing it constantly right in front of everyone. This is just something that everyone around them knows and accepts for the most part. I'm sure there's some shitheads, but we've not really seen any of them in the show yet. So, but the parents get uncomfortable and awkward about it. It kind of raises this thing where Jordan's like, hey, I'm not just a boy, like, sometimes I'm a girl. And the dad's like, the dad's lines were interesting to me, because he says that he's not a bigot, and then he says, and I get that some kids don't have a choice, but you do. And it was an interesting little phrasing, because obviously the parallels of just like parents of a trans kid, or even just a queer kid, like they're very obvious here. And if anything, this conversation almost made me think that Jordan does actually seem to lean towards the girl form more than the boy form as a preference. But I don't know if that's just because it was retaliating against what the dad was saying so much, because he was leaning so heavy into being a boy, that Jordan was kind of pushing back by really emphasizing the girl side of them. But I like, yeah, it's definitely an interesting like debating thing here. But the dad just can't wrap his head around this idea, and wants them to, which again is silly to me, because like, they're a super and they're at a college for supers, and they want a future for their kid as a super, but their super ability involves switching genders, which makes them uncomfortable. And there's probably some interesting commentary in there about, again, it's kind of like what I was saying back when I was theorizing the powers were like at the moment of switching, that maybe the strength of who this person isn't what makes them different, and is like they can only be the best of what they are by being true to themselves. And that's the hypocrisy from the parents in this case, is that they're trying to hold one part of them back because they're not comfortable with it, but they're kind of holding their kid back from flourishing as much as they claim they want them to. There's definitely some symbolism in there with that, but I thought all that stuff was good. I really enjoyed this. I think Jordan was immediately an interesting character from just the abilities and what they were, but this really kind of like dove into it a little bit deeper, really gave the idea that the parents see it a certain way and how they feel. I actually, I was talking about how they all kind of get together. Marie ends up, you know, leaving when she realizes that Shetty's kind of just used her as like basically a prop to get more funding. She's there to smile for the cameras and make all these rich people open their wallets. It makes Marie kind of storm off on her own. She's not very happy about it. She realizes that she's kind of just like a toy for the big wigs, and ends up running into Jordan and doesn't want to fight. And it's actually Kate who reaches out and says, sit with us, and because she realizes that Marie's learned a lot of things about this place and like what she's been made to do here, and sort of extends an olive branch. So we get this scene where the three of them are sitting down, and actually it's actually I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Marie confesses what happened to her parents first, because I think it's Jordan who says something about, oh, I bet you make mummy and daddy very proud or something, and that kind of inspires Marie to turn around and say, no, my parents are dead, I killed them, and explains how it happened. Short form, condenses it down to a couple of sentences, but gets the point across. This makes Kate open up, and we find out how Kate first used her powers, and it's equally pretty horrifying. She was getting annoyed when she was, I don't know even the age she was, 10, 12, whatever. She was on a camping trip with her family, and because her brother was annoying her by kicking her shins, she grabbed him, and not knowing she had powers that would result in anything, said, I wish you would, or I want you to go away and never come back. And he did. And that, I love that, because it's such an innocent statement that a sibling would say to another sibling. No one would blame someone for getting angry and saying something like that. It just sounds like something a kid would say. But because of her powers, as soon as she utters the phrase, immediately we and Marie, we both, like the audience and Marie, both just, oh god. Like the kid, like she's like, the kid just walked out, my brother just walked out into the forest and never came back. Notably, the forest, the woods, that's the prison under this. It's probably just a thematic link more than anything else, but I do think it's an interesting little thematic touch there, that we're literally talking about a prison that is intentionally got the forest all over the walls. But anyway, so I really enjoyed this kind of them like having this heart to heart and bonding and getting to know each other. And I thought Jordan's little joke at the end was quite good, where they jump in and say, well, I killed my grandmother with my powers. And Kate's like, no, you didn't. And Jordan just says, yeah, I know, but I wanted to feel included. I thought that was good. I thought that was some bonding. And then that's right as Andre comes up and says, your roommate Emma might be in trouble because she's still down there. And Kate had asked them not to pursue any of this because they witnessed a guy get murdered. They also had sex, by the way. They had this touching moment earlier on, and got to a lot more touching. So that's the thing. They kind of make a couple of comments about it. I don't really have much to say yet. It makes sense in the context of them both really caring, her being very thankful that he's looking out for her and vice versa. I did really appreciate that she kind of threatens that she can make him not pursue the investigation, but he's like, nah, you wouldn't do that to me. But I actually, more than that, because there's some flashbacks early on to Sam in, well, it's not in the woods to begin with, it's just at some other facility, and they call in Golden Boy, who comes with Kate, to try and calm Sam down because he's punching the walls and he's all like agitated and stuff, which is a glorious scene because Sam punches a guard who electrocutes him with a taser by punching him through the stomach, and you see his fist come out of the guard's mouth. It's glorious. I mean, maybe I've got a nasty, sick, vile brain, but I love this visual. It was so good. So I enjoyed that, but the thing I was bringing up, though, because I kind of skipped over all that, but at the start, I wanted to get to all the juicy stuff, is that there's a scene afterwards where Golden Boy is with Kate, and it's after the Golden Boy's been told that Sam is dead. He's been told that Sam's committed suicide, which we know is a lie, but he is reacting to that news and he's crying. And he turns to Kate and says, tell me not to feel this way. He's asking her to use her power so that he will not feel sad. And I actually love this scene for Kate, because Kate's saying, no, you have to go through this. Much like she had a couple of good scenes last episode as well, but I think this was another good little scene of like making me really like her as a character, because she's like, no, you have to go through this, and instead just holds him, which is the more healthy approach. And I think that's another idea that we have to kind of get into here, is the idea of relying on your powers like they're a crutch, like they're a drug even, to like remove emotions or deal with emotions in an unhealthy way. That's something the boys has definitely dove into. The boys has used powers to be a crutch to get over your emasculation and things like that. So I think this made a lot of sense to me for him to want that in the moment. And I don't think he's a weak person for asking for that. He knows she can do that. I get why he's asking, but I commend her as a character for the strength to not do it, and that made me like her a little bit more. So yeah, all this stuff was very good. We got a deep cameo crying about the death of Clancy Brown. He was just talking on a TV screen, nothing much to it, but I thought I'd mention it. Yeah, I thought it was very good. It was a very good episode. I'm excited for weekly episodes from here on out. So I had a good time, and I think they did a lot to ramp up the momentum of the main story. I felt the stakes. They established how dangerous it is going down into this place, the danger that Emma is now in by being down there, and the characters sort of starting to come together a little bit. I really liked. So yeah, that is episode 3 of Gen V. Let me know what you think of the episode in the comments below. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep it all coming. And yeah, you know, I don't know what I was building up to after that. I ran out of steam. Thank you for watching, everyone. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?